Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we're looking at the real-world drama playing out in reality television. We sort of strip away all the surface-level chaos and get into the actual consequences of living a life that's just magnified by fame.
Exactly. I mean, when people sign on for this, they're not just getting a paycheck. They're basically setting up an unintentional laboratory.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, a laboratory for human nature under, the most extreme pressure. We're talking financial risk, legal exposure, all of it weaponized for ratings.
Right. And these people are making these irreversible life decisions. Business mergers, divorce strategies, deciding where to draw the line on privacy. And they're doing it all knowing that the clock is ticking and cameras are recording every single move.
The stakes are never just social, are they? They're often existential. They're redefining their finances, their family, their entire public identity all at the same time.
And while a lot of these shows are, they're designed for distraction, the true mission of this analysis is to provide Bravo podcasts for good night's sleep. We're synthesizing all the recent updates from these big franchises, but we're focusing on the heavy, consequential stuff, not the drama.
We're digging into the fine print.
Exactly. The stuff that actually matters. We want to extract those essential insights about the real-world consequences, the high cost of putting your whole life out there.
And the material we've pulled together for today really highlights relationships, marriages, friendships, family bonds. All of them are facing these ultimate public tests.
We're talking about everything from multi-million-dollar business failures that are threatening their whole future,
to active legal battles where the reality footage is literally key evidence.
Decades-long family feuds that are somehow finally seeing a resolution. And then you have these high-stakes exits from the shows themselves, driven by, mental health.
It's a comprehensive look at what it takes to survive under constant, unrelenting public scrutiny.
Okay, let's just get right into it. Section 1, marital and financial fall lines. Because, nothing tests a relationship like losing everything.
Especially when that failure involves one spouse taking the other's advice against their own gut feeling.
Well, that takes us straight to Salt Lake City, to the incredibly complex and fractured situation with Whitney Rose and Justin Rose.
This is such a textbook example of how a shared financial failure isn't just about stress. It metastasizes into real marital strain, especially when you're famous.
Because you can't escape it.
You can't. The failure becomes public, it attaches to your family name forever, and the narrative is already so fractured because of all these conflicting reports. That's the first thing we have to dissect here.
Well, that's why those initial insider claims were so explosive. We had allegations that Justin was actively preparing to blindside Whitney with divorce papers.
And the reason given was so specific.
It was. The catalyst was her disastrous business failures and the alleged depletion of all their life savings.
Yeah.
It suggests this wasn't a slow burn. It was a sudden, sharp financial breaking point for him.
And if you follow that thread of that specific insider report, then Justin's whole reason for being on the show becomes purely transactional.
Right.
The claim was he'd been sick and tired of the show for years and only stuck around for the money. So if that's true, and their life savings, the very reason he put up with all of this, are now gone because of business mistakes,
then the contract, in his mind at least, is broken.
It's nullified. And you add to that his belief that his professional reputation has been in tatters because of the show's exposure.
That phrase, reputation in tatters, that's a big one.
Yeah.
We have to look at the non-monetary cost here. Justin Rose had a senior executive role at Newskin. That's a major position, stable, respected. When he left that to become a full-time reality star, he traded that traditional reputation for a very high-risk public one. So if he's now associated with a bankrupt company and a failed marriage, that's a huge professional cost that goes way beyond just the lost savings.
It's arguably unrecoverable. And the legal stakes here are much higher than just drama. If he really was talking to divorce lawyers, as that source suggested, then things behind the scenes were approaching a really calculated crisis point.
It becomes about asset protection.
Exactly. Liability.
Yeah.
He'd be trying to separate his future from a venture that, he may have advised on, but that ultimately collapsed under his wife's name.
Okay, but here's where we have to pause, because this is where the complexity of reporting on this stuff comes in. Almost immediately, we got a conflicting counter-narrative.
Right. A source close to them stepped up very quickly to say those claims were just rumors and not true.
And that push and pull between public information and private fact is constant in this world. But having two strong, conflicting sources just confirms how unstable everything is under the surface.
But whether divorce papers were on the table or not, The financial devastation is a confirmed fact. Whitney admitted it herself on camera.
She did. We have her confession that they had gone all in on this new entity after merging Wild Rose Beauty, and now they literally have nothing.
And she talked about that crushing weight, the personal shame.
Yeah, she felt she'd failed her employees, her customers, and her family. That is just an enormous burden of guilt for an entrepreneurial mistake that was supposed to launch them into a whole new stratosphere.
And what's so critical here is the source material that details exactly how that mistake happened, because that's where the deep personal resentment in the marriage comes from.
It all comes down to spousal trust and professional agency. Whitney was making real progress, getting Wild Rose Beauty into big retail stores.
Which is the holy grail for a brand like that.
Of course. But Justin convinced her to abandon that path and pivot to 100% direct-to-consumer sales. He thought they could make more money controlling the whole pipeline.
That is such a classic business red flag, isn't it? Abandoning a proven path for a theoretical, high-risk one.
And she admitted she was convinced by the numbers he flashed in front of her. But critically, she said she didn't listen to her own gut. She trusted him because she thought this was the first time he really believed the business could go to the next level, but only if she did it his way.
So when it failed, the resentment wasn't just about losing money. It was about losing her own agency. She compromised her own professional judgment for his, thinking that was the only way to earn his full respect for her business.
Which means she couldn't separate the business drama from their marriage. She even admitted she was just there, like emotionally checked out.
And Justin's admission just confirms it all. He said he made a mistake, and most tellingly, he admitted he could feel the resentment from her.
Yeah.
What's so fascinating is his realization that she felt this joint venture was the only way he thought her business could succeed. He had to reassure her, no, I always believed in your company. I just thought this was how we could do it together.
It's just a brutal public cautionary tale of how fast you can go from ambitious business partners to, well, damaged, resentful spouses. It's a total accounting of how financial disaster is never just about the money.
No, it's about the erosion of respect and autonomy.
Okay, so let's move from Salt Lake, where financial failure bred all this resentment, to Beverly Hills, where we find a really different kind of marital fault line with Kyle Richards and Mauricio Umansky. They're in this specific, almost bewildering state of being separated but not divorced.
Kyle's position is so unique because of her longevity. 15 years on camera, that's unheard of. And she's confessed that she has quit the show in her mind so many times.
So what's keeping her there?
It's a deep, almost paralyzing fear of change and loss. She said that when a show has been part of your life for that long, the cast and crew, they become your on-screen family. Walking away would feel like another loss.
That fear of change is a really powerful tether, both psychologically and, economically. It suggests the structure of the show, for all its conflict, gives her a kind of scaffolding for her life that she's afraid to take down. But she was clear about the hardest part of those 15 years. And it wasn't the petty arguments. She said the absolutely most difficult thing has been the arguments with her sisters playing out in public.
And that's a critical distinction. It's not about navigating caste drama. It's about the invasion of your most fundamental relationships. Having intensely private family issues televised with millions of people weighing in, taking sides. That's the deepest invasion of privacy imaginable.
It really raises a big question for anyone getting into this business, right? If your job is based on exposing your family's privacy, can you ever really prioritize the health of those relationships over what the show needs from you?
Her story suggests the answer is a painful 15-year conflict.
And during that time, she also had this huge setback with her friendship with Dorit Kemsley on a cast trip. She admitted it left them worse off than ever, even after they'd made progress.
Which just shows you the cycle of conflict on these shows. You fix one thing, and the production engine or just the group dynamic forces a new problem to the surface, and it undoes all your hard work.
And in that specific fight, Dorit questioned Kyle's sobriety.
Right.
Which highlights another constant test of public life, people challenging your personal achievements. Kyle had to publicly confirm she hasn't had alcohol in 3 years and 5 months. And her frustration was that she was trying to have a conversation with someone who was not open-minded to listening to the facts.
It's a weaponized tactic, that refusal to listen or just choosing to inject doubt into something positive like sobriety. It keeps the other person on the defensive and makes sure the conflict keeps going no matter what the truth is.
And finally, the status of her separation from Mauricio. She confirmed they still get along very well, they respect each other, and crucially, she said, Fighting was never their issue. She said it would have been better if we did fight sometimes, because that might have forced a resolution.
That's such a powerful contrast to the Roses. The Roses are dealing with this explicit resentment from a huge documented mistake. The Richards-Umansky split seems to be more from a slow, decades-long drift apart that wasn't combative.
She even confirmed they have literally not had that divorce conversation, which she knows is very confusing to a lot of people.
It's the definition of an ambiguous middle ground.
Yeah.
They're managing the separation well enough to maintain their brand, co-parent, and avoid a messy legal battle. So there hasn't been anything intense enough to push either one of us to formally end the marriage yet.
It's a really complex financial and social strategy that you really only see with these high-profile couples who share massive business interests.
But that ambiguity, while it's stable for their brand, is its own kind of stress. At least it's not the public, existential financial dread we saw in Utah.
Okay, let's shift now to Section 2, where the stakes move from private assets to public accusations and active legal battles. This is the ultimate collision between reality TV narratives and actual judicial consequences. We're talking about the deeply contentious case with Demi Engman and Marciano Brunet.
This legal dispute is just a potent and frankly frightening example of how reality TV footage gets weaponized. The camera is supposed to capture reality, but the editing, the sound bites, the framing, it all creates these competing narratives that then spill into courtrooms.
And suddenly judges have to become the arbiters of what actually happened when the cameras are rolling.
Exactly. And the core of this claim is Demi's insistence that she was sexually assaulted and inappropriately touched by Marciano without her consent. She believes, and she has said this publicly, that there is footage in a hallway that would prove her account.
Which puts the burden of proof, or at least the key evidence, squarely on the network and the production company that has that raw footage.
But Marciano's response wasn't just defensive, it was aggressive. He sued her for defamation. And we need to be clear about what that means.
Right.
Defamation, in this case, means he's claiming she made a false public statement that harmed his reputation. He's saying their interaction was just a consensual kiss and that Demi strategically reframed it to get a compelling storyline for the show. He's seeking damages and an injunction.
And a narrowly tailored injunction is a really tactical legal move.
It is. It's not about money, it's about control. His legal team wants a court order that specifically stops Demi from repeating these statements in the future. It's designed to enforce legal silence, to stop any more damage to his reputation, no matter what the final settlement is.
And a huge part of his legal argument hinges on their contact after the incident.
A huge part. His lawsuit includes text messages that allegedly show Demi stayed in contact texts, calls, FaceTime for months afterwards.
Including an invitation from her to visit and attend her show premiere.
Right. And his lawyers are using that to argue that it confirms a continued relationship and that her behavior is legally inconsistent with someone who had just been sexually assaulted.
This is where the legal reality just fundamentally clashes with the emotional reality you see on TV. The legal system wants objective, provable evidence, the receipts, while the show thrives on drama and emotional claims.
And he also expanded the lawsuit to include the producer, Jeff Jenkins, alleging that his company aired her accusations even though they knew or had reason to know that they were false. That expands the potential liability way beyond just the cast.
And then you have the Lisa Vanderpump factor. The executive producer, the ultimate power figure in this universe, adds this whole other layer of corporate authority.
It's fascinating. She publicly defended Marciano. She claimed she'd personally seen every ounce of the footage and critically said she could categorically know what happened.
By saying that, she's essentially acting as a primary character witness for the defense, all based on her executive position and her access to the evidence.
It raises a big ethical question, doesn't it? What happens when an executive producer with a vested interest in the show's success becomes the sole judge of what the evidence shows?
But Demi has this powerful and deeply frustrating counterclaim about that exact footage.
Right.
She said she sent a demand letter for the footage herself to use it to prove her side of the story. But she was told by the network that they did not have access to the footage.
So you have this baffling situation where the executive producer claims she's seen every ounce. But the network tells the litigant she can't access it. It completely blocks her ability to defend herself in court.
It's just, it's unsettling. The level of control the network has when they are the sole gatekeepers of evidence in a defamation lawsuit, that must be a terrifying position to be in.
And as if that wasn't enough, you have this bizarre side plot that came out of all this, the whole Fruity Pebbles controversy.
Oh, right. with Jesse Nigatakara exposing that Brett Engelman drank Demi's urine. Demi just called it an awkward topic.
But it's classic character assassination. It's an attempt to shock and distract the public from the core legal issue by introducing something that's just extreme personal humiliation.
But despite all of that, the public scrutiny, the side plots, the legal battle, her husband Brett has been incredibly supportive. He said he's fallen more deeply in love with her through this process because of how she's handled it.
And that just reinforces this idea that extreme external adversity, while it can damage your public reputation, can paradoxically strengthen your private relationships.
A complete contrast to the Roses.
A direct contrast. For them, shared business failure created resentment. Here, an external attack seems to have reinforced a powerful sense of loyalty.
Okay, let's move into Section 3 and pivot away from legal and financial consequences to look at, well, the complex dynamics of loyalty, alliances, and cast transitions.
Yeah.
I mean, when your job is to be friends or enemies on camera, how do you even define a real relationship?
This is maybe the most intriguing psychological part of this whole industry. Reality TV incentivizes alliances. Because two people fighting against the majority, that makes for better TV. It secures camera time for both of them.
But that transactional nature just inherently destabilizes a genuine friendship, right? When that alliance is inevitably questioned by everyone else.
Mm-hmm. And the recent fracture between Sutton Strack and Garcelle Beauvais on RHOBH is a perfect example of this test. Sutton looked back on it and insisted she never saw it as a fake friendship. She said Garcelle was one of her best friends in LA, and the idea of it being transactional was not on my radar at all.
And she gave this really precise, painful timeline of how it ended.
Which is crucial for analyzing the emotional shift. She detailed trying to reach out after the season 14 reunion phone calls, trying to set up dinner, and the friendship, for her, effectively ended after April 1st, when Garcelle just replied, "I'm not available."
And Sutton found Garcelle's later comments about her not doing enough in the friendship really insulting because she felt like she'd always been there.
But the alliance theory, the strong counterclaim, was pushed by co-stars like Dorit Kemsley and Kyle Richards. They said they always suspected the relationship was just an alliance formed because they both felt like the new kids on the block.
But isn't that a natural response? If you're new to a hostile environment, why wouldn't you form an alliance with another new person?
It would be a genuine response to a shared defensive need. But Dorit and Kyle saw Garcelle's demand for blind loyalty, and then her unfollowing Sutton, as confirmation that it was just situational, disposable once its professional utility was over.
But then you have Jennifer Tilly, who provided this really robust defense of the friendship.
And her perspective is so important because it proves the friendship existed outside of the on-camera conflict. She cited specific off-camera examples like Sutton throwing a baby shower for Garcelle's son.
So it was real.
It was real. But the cameras and the reunion dynamic that forces this public accounting, that's what ultimately destroyed it. It proves even genuine relationships can be destroyed by the job.
Erica Jane also weighed in, saying she thought it was a real relationship, but couldn't speak to the depth. She also reacted to Pozoma St. John, saying Garcelle wanted her fired, which made Erica wonder, why me? What did I do?
But that reaction just reveals the deeper cyclical tension of the show. Erica might claim innocence, but the history of conflict ensures the cast is always looking to undermine or remove the next person. The whole thing just shows that whether a relationship is genuine or strategic, once it dissolves, the cast is quick to retroactively define it as just a mechanism of the show.
Let's look at a much more aggressive approach to setting boundaries, this one coming from Jassy Rideau on The Real Housewives of Potomac. She's actively trying to protect her personal life from being consumed by the show's narrative, which is a rare thing to see.
And very difficult to pull off. Her actions around her wedding photos are a perfect, immediate example. She directly addressed why her co-star Stacey Rush was cropped out, and she explained, "I didn't want anybody fake in my photo." She said her wedding was truly so sacred and she only wanted genuine people there.
That is an incredibly powerful public declaration. She's signaling that her personal milestones are not for performance art. She's not going to have a transactional colleague there whose integrity she doubts. She actively edited the reality of her own event to protect the memory.
And she applied that same fierce boundary to her huge argument with Tia Glover.
Right, the one about the joke Tia made about Jassy having a connection at a resort just weeks before her wedding.
The joke itself seems minor, but Jassie's reaction was massive, and she explained her reasoning, which is key to understanding the meta-level performance here. She first tried to calmly draw a boundary with Tia privately, saying she was worried the joke would lead another co-star to bring up something that's just not true.
To create a manufactured scandal.
Exactly. So when Tia brought it up again at dinner in front of the cameras, Jassie snapped. She accused Tia of doing it specifically to create a big argument for the show. Jassie wasn't fighting the joke. She was fighting the intentional introduction of conflict just to generate a storyline.
She has a profound awareness of the engine of reality TV. She saw the joke as a seed for a manufactured rumor, and instead of letting it escalate for the cameras, she shut it down preemptively.
It's the ultimate meta-commentary. The fight isn't about the joke. It's about the conscious decision to create conflict just because it makes good TV.
Okay, finally in this section, let's talk about the highest cost of this industry. The human toll. The cast exits and transitions. We have updates from Selling Sunset and Southern Charm that confirm no amount of money can make up for the psychological toll.
Starting with Selling Sunset, Emma Hernan hinted very strongly at leaving. She said she's tapped out and wants to prioritize time with her family. And she confirmed a big reason she returned after season 8 was to tell my side of the story.
That need to return just to manage your public narrative, that confirms how damaging the show can be. You feel forced to re-enter a toxic environment just to control how people see you.
It immediately echoes Chrishell Staus's definitive exit after 9 seasons. Chrishell said the show was no longer good for my mental health, even with all the financial success it brought her. She reached a point where she didn't need the money, so she could prioritize her well-being over the paycheck.
The convergence of those two stories is really instructive. It shows that the financial benefits, which can be massive, are simply not worth the sustained, chronic psychological toll for a lot of cast members. The moment they realize they don't have to do it for the money is the moment they escape.
And switching to Southern Charm, we see how quickly alliances shift. Molly O'Connell explained her short romance with Shep Rose didn't work because they were better as friends. And her final summary was so telling. It's Shep at the end of the day, suggesting his TV-defined personality was the unchangeable obstacle.
She also teased a pop-off moment in season 11 where some anger comes out, which is the reality TV calculus, isn't it? Even if a relationship fails, you can leverage the conflict into a future storyline to stay relevant.
And Vanita Aston confirmed her allegiance to Paige DeSorbo during her split with Craig Conover, put her on the outs with Craig. It's classic reality TV physics. Choosing a side in one relationship instantly creates conflict in another. Loyalty is a zero-sum game, and siding with a friend means automatically creating an enemy.
Let's move now to our last section, section 4, endurance and reconciliation. After years of public fights, televised trauma, relational warfare, what does it take to finally heal, and what's the lasting impact?
We can start with a surprisingly positive story out of New Jersey. Teresa Giudice's extended family healing. This shows that even the most bitter, years-long family feuds that were magnified and distorted by the show, can eventually find common ground.
Teresa announced she's reconciled with her cousin, Kathy Wakile, right after making up with her brother, Joe, and sister-in-law, Melissa. The public nature of their feud, which spanned a decade, made this seem completely impossible just a little while ago.
And her motivation, as she stated it, was all about blood. She sees Joe, Kathy, and Rosie as her only family in New Jersey. And that realization suggests that the artificial hostilities created by the show can eventually give way to the more enduring biological significance of family.
It's a moment of clarity, isn't it? Recognizing that the temporary drama is less important than the permanent family connection.
And for that to happen, they all have to mutually decide to jettison the reality they perform for the cameras in favor of the private, essential truth of their relationship.
And the response from Kathy Wakile was just as positive. She sent a beautiful text to Teresa and her brother, expressing genuine happiness they'd made up. It suggests a mutual desire to move past the televised conflict.
It highlights a powerful outcome, that airing all your grievances publicly, while destructive in the short term, can sometimes pave the way for real, irreversible healing once the pressure of the cameras is gone.
Now, let's turn to a much more sobering reflection on endurance, one that shows the deep psychological scar tissue left by this kind of prolonged conflict. And that comes from Bethany Frankel, detailing the decade-long trauma of her divorce from Jason Hoppy.
This reflection is so profound because Bethany explicitly contextualized the suffering against her own, incredibly traumatic personal history. She called the decade-long divorce the most traumatic experience of her life. She said it surpassed early life trauma, being around the mafia, even witnessing her mother's abuse and suicide attempts.
That is a staggering statement. For a woman who has endured such extreme conditions since she was a child to say, nothing compares to what my divorce was for 10 years. It just gives you a chilling measure of the calculated torment she experienced.
It wasn't a normal divorce. It was a sustained weaponization of the legal system and the media.
She detailed these extreme allegations of torture, saying the whole ordeal included fraud, stealing, hacking, harassment, and abuse.
The financial cost was immense, millions of dollars just to defend herself. She described physical effects from the stress and just extreme emotional abuse, being called names like Ursula the Witch.
She framed it as someone actively choosing every single day for 10 years to torture you and telling you that they're going to do it. And she felt like she looked like the powerhouse tyrant to the public because she was the more successful one, which has just compounded the injury.
The most painful examples involved the manipulation of their child. She talked about her daughter being used as a pawn and described these specific instances of torment, like FaceTime calls being directed at a toilet so she couldn't see her child. She called the entire period torment from 1 minute to the last minute of the 10th year.
The psychological toll of being trapped in a system designed to monetize your success while subjecting you to abuse. It's just hard to comprehend.
But what's truly fascinating about her endurance is the single unbreakable rule she maintained through that entire decade. Amidst all the trauma, all the allegations, she never said a bad thing about the other parent in front of her daughter.
She believed it was essential, explaining that the child will eventually become cognizant of the truth on her own, and that practice refusing to use your child as a tool for validation or leverage is just an incredible demonstration of prioritizing the child's well-being over her own immediate need for vindication.
That single boundary became the ultimate definition of her personal victory. The knowledge that she maintained that one essential rule, it speaks volumes about the capacity for self-control under the greatest imaginable duress.
So what does this all mean, looking back across this deep dive? We've seen catastrophic financial decisions shatter marriages, high-stakes legal challenges, fractured friendships, and years of enduring personal torture.
Well, I think we can pull out 3 key lessons from this reality laboratory. First, financial risks in these reality TV marriages are often existential risks. They immediately expose foundational weaknesses like resentment, which was the deep truth for Whitney and Justin Rose.
Right. The financial cost is just the manifestation of the failure of trust.
Second, the quest for authenticity, for defending your own truth, it constantly clashes with the pressure to create a storyline, and that leads directly to these costly legal battles. Like we saw with Demi Enchman and Marciana Burnett, the footage itself becomes the disputed piece of evidence.
And third, things like sobriety, integrity, personal boundaries. They are constantly challenged and weaponized by co-stars who are just looking for conflict.
Exactly. Whether it was Kyle Richards defending her 3 years of sobriety or Jassy Rideau cropping a co-star out of a sacred wedding photo, maintaining a sense of self requires aggressive, proactive boundary enforcement against a machine that's designed to just erase them.
And ultimately, we see stars making a choice about the cost of the confessional. We saw it with Chrishell Stause, and now maybe with Emma Hernan, choosing their mental health over the massive financial rewards. It proves no amount of money is worth that sustained psychological pressure.
And that's the ultimate lesson, isn't it? The high cost of public performance. We've explored claims of faked alliances, financial ruin, years of torture. So if the camera forces people into these specific polarized roles, conflict, alliance, legal action, just to stay relevant, the question for you, the learner, is this. How can an individual under that level of scrutiny truly define their own version of reality and maintain their sense of self when their job requires the constant performance of a personality? What does it take to draw a line in the sand that even a TV camera cannot cross?
Food for thought indeed. Thank you for joining us for this analysis of the high price of fame and consequence.
A pleasure as always.